You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, and this is News with the Eyes of Faith, where I talk about news from the perspective of Christ and the doctrine of Christ, and look at things with the eyes of faith. Well, first item in the news, Joe Biden is still president. And this is part of the confusocracy. We are acting like he's not president, or he's sort of president. Harris is president, but sometimes he's not. And this is the whole confusocracy tactic. That's what I'm doing, is untangling the confusocracy. Well, President Biden spoke at the UN for some reason, sort of his farewell address. And this contrast, sorry, I had a cutting accent this morning as I was cutting food, so it looks worse than it really is. It's sort of a little bit of the skin, so it's keeping my hand hidden. I don't know if you knew this, but Scotty James Doohan on Star Trek was actually missing a finger. He got a wound in World War II, and so they'd kind of cover up where he had one of his fingers missing. Oh, this is another one over here. See, actually, I work blue collar. I get scrapes and cut myself, unlike people who work in mansions. So Joe Biden spoke at the United Nations for some reason, giving his farewell address. This contrast back in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan gave a farewell address from the White House, from the Oval Office. I put a link to it, and it's an interesting contrast. You want to see how much times have changed just during one lifetime. He talks about the changes and his concerns for the future, and it's worth watching. Of course, you can always play it twice fast to get done quicker. But man, which way are people's heads facing? Biden's facing the United Nations, Reagan is facing America. So, confusocracy. And part of that, Kamala Harris is still positioning herself as an outsider. It's a shifting ground tactic. Sometimes she is, I have all this experience as vice president, but we need to make these changes. And, well, she's not president, but certainly as a vice president, you do have influence. You can shape things. She is president of the Senate. You remember that border czar thing where she wasn't a border czar, but she really was? She does have a portfolio, sort of a assignment she's supposed to perform. Now, it's interesting. She's adopting Republican platforms, Republican talking points. This is, again, the confusocracy. Here's this cover issue of Reason Magazine. Harris's freedom flip-flops. Hey, Soviet Union. Comrade Hot Dick endorse Gobble Harris. Yeah, Comrade Hot Dick. He's another character I play just to do commentary, sort of like Saturday Night Live. We're catching on. This idea of a confusocracy is catching on. So make that word stick. Book of Mormon, flattering words and fair promises. So I think I covered that. Let me put the hat this way. So Salt Lake Temple, the church released some images of the Salt Lake Temple. It's not going to be the same, but it looks good. I like it. I took out my endowments in the Salt Lake Temple, and so I had the Pioneer era layout where you move room from rooms and increase. And you had the walking up the stairwell where the Savior appeared to Lorenzo Snow. It's interesting to look at the celestial room. They apparently took out the statue of, people think it was Mary. I'm not exactly sure if it was. And then they had the Cupid statue on smaller staircases. I think they're leaving the two ceiling rooms in the Salt Lake Temple. Some of the older temples, Manti, they'd have the celestial room. They'd have ceiling rooms adjacent to it, which is kind of interesting because that's the progress. You go from the creation room, the garden room, the world room, the terrestrial room, and then the celestial room, then to the ceiling room. Also had the Holy of Holies there. That'll be interesting to see if they leave that in there. That was in between the two ceiling rooms. So that's interesting news. James Huntsman, his tithing refund lawsuit is continuing. This is about the church's investment portfolio. Well, I have one. I call it a 401k. I mean, the church has an emergency fund, an investment portfolio. I have an emergency fund and an investment portfolio. I also have the 401k, but also a separate one. If you don't have one, you're kind of stupid. And that's all I got to say to that. David Trench, a reporter, spoke at BYU. There's let's see what he says. New York Times is an article. He's a Harris supporter, but he is a conservative who's supporting Harris, and Dick Cheney's one. And I understand. See, the problem isn't between Trump and Harris. The problem is, how do we get in this situation? The election's a smaller thing. The bigger issue is, why did things get to this point? And, that's, you remember King Mosiah II in the Book of Mormon, where he talks about it in Mosiah chapter 29. He said, look, here's a new system. We'll have judges. And if you reach the point where, you have all these problems, it's not the system problem, it's a people problem. Besides BYU, it's a university that we're supposed to have diverse viewpoints. China launched an ICBM, and has a word, that word chili cook-off coming along after China launched an ICBM. We're in denial, we're distracting ourselves. Since it's a slow news day, I'd like to talk a little bit about intellectual ammunition. This is ball and powder for Elder President Holland's Musket Brigade. So when people talk about President Trump, these talking points I'm talking about, when they talk about the January 6th insurrection, that was covered in the second impeachment. You say Trump's an insurrectionist. Well, that was covered in the second impeachment, so what do you know that Congress doesn't know? Because they covered that already. So you know something, and what exactly is that? Now, here's another talking point. Trump and Russian collusion. Trump got elected because he colluded with Russia, and they had social media influencers. That was covered in the Mueller report. So what do you know that the government doesn't know? I mean, if you believe that, that was not precisely debunked, but there just wasn't sufficient evidence. You also have the Durham report, where it talked about the FBI was not impartial in their investigation of Trump with the Russian collusion. Okay, and so let's ask them about that, the Mueller report and the Durham report. So there's clearly a problem with the FBI, but of course there's no problem with the Secret Service. There's no seepage, just compartmentalized with the FBI. So let's that's intellectual ammunition. Let me talk about debate techniques. Just calmly state the facts. They're going to respond with emotion, and that's the reason why we have the two different political parties. Some people base decision on facts, some on emotion. And actually, if you listen to people talk, take the statement, the Book of Mormon is true, and then, I love the Book of Mormon. Book of Mormon is true, I love the Book of Mormon. Those are not the same statements. Those are not interchangeable. One's an emotional attachment, and one's saying, hey, that's, which is internalized to the person. The other one says, okay, I'm dealing with it outside objective reality. So part of the problem is there's going to be an intention that you want to marshal more facts, but if a person's making decisions in terms of emotion, rather factual discussion, you're just not going to get anywhere. If you keep talking, another tactic that people on the left use is, since they don't have a rational basis, it's all an emotional attachment. They have all these fantasies and dreams about Vice President Harris, and it's the same thing they had with Obama. Oh, yeah, he's going to be good. Well, why? Why do you believe that? And it's nothing. It's just an emotional attachment. And since they can't rationally defend it, they'll switch grounds and start attacking you. They'll turn on the insult factory. Well, when they start insulting you, that means you won, and it's time to walk away because you're not going to get anywhere. Step away from discussions. Another argument they use is confirmation bias. And so someone brings up confirmation bias. Okay, how did you break out of confirmation bias? Apparently you believe I am, but how do you break out of it? Where are you an objective standard? Just ask questions, don't make statements, and walk away. Don't make this contentious. Here's some more things. Sun Tzu, who wrote Art of War, talked about this, said that you don't attack the enemy, you balk their plans. That is, you attack their strategy. Now, you saw this in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. After the great battle at the end, Aslan congratulates Peter. He said, point out that Peter did something. He didn't attack the witch, but he attacked her wand. Now, think about that. The witch is casting spells on people, the magic wand, poof, you're turning you into a stone statue, you're a stone statue. What Peter did is he took the wand out of play, then he was able to subdue the witch. This should seem familiar if you saw Episode 1, The Phantom Menace of Star Wars. Qui-Gon Jinn and Ben Kenobi are fighting Darth Maul, and to Darth Maul's credit, he's able to hold off... let's do a red pen this time for the red lightsaber. He's able to hold off two Jedi Knights, or a Jedi Knight and an apprentice, at the same time, and it's a draw. They just keep pushing, and Darth Maul was slowly losing ground, but he was putting up a good fight. What happens is that Darth Maul is able to separate Qui-Gon Jinn and Ben Kenobi in the energy area, where they have the pit, and he's able to overpower Qui-Gon Jinn and kill him. So that's a divide and conquer tactic that Darth Maul used. So Ben Kenobi comes in there, starts fighting him, and Ben Kenobi does one thing. He knocks out the end of Darth Maul's lightsaber, so instead of having this two-pronged lightsaber that he has, he's only fighting with a conventional one. And so it levels the playing ground. And that's the same tactic. You attack the wand, you attack the lightsaber, not Darth Maul, the wand. Now, what this means is one of the mechanisms, you don't take away free speech and you don't violate people, but one way to prevent Gadiantans from taking over government is that you have good people hold office. This is the displacement strategy. Gadiant robbers in office, they have the color of office, the authority of office, plus the discretionary power. If you have a good person in office, they're able to use the color of office and discretionary power to do good things. Now think about that's a strategy. You're going to have to get out of your comfort zone and hold office, or do what I'm doing, is get on social media and talk about things. Now, another tactic about humor. Humor can affect, but also be a diversionary tactic. People will crack jokes instead of responding to you. Now, this is what Aristotle said. The Greek philosopher Aristotle, this is how far it goes. He says, as for jests, since they may sometimes be useful in debates, the advice of Gorgias was good, to confound their opponent's earnestness with jest and their jest with earnestness. In other words, if someone is cracking a joke, you become serious. If they become serious, you crack a joke. So if they're cracking a joke, said, well, we're discussing serious issues and you want to be the next Jerry Seinfeld. If someone's serious, say, look, rigid uptightness is just not going to help us here. It's counterproductive to human compassion. And in conclusion, when you're persuading people and getting in debates, remember what Ronald Reagan said, all great change begins over the dinner table. So let me conclude with a life hack. We've got General Conference coming. Wow, I'm at 12 minutes. So this is slow news day and I'm talking a lot. So General Conference is more than sweet rolls. Your fathers ate manna in the wilderness and are dead. Jesus said unto them, my meat is to do the will of him that sent me and to finish his work and not sit around and eat unhealthy junk food. Say a blessing over the junk food and expect your pancreas to keep functioning. So when you're doing conference prep, do temple preparation first. You go shopping on Friday. Sometimes you might want to pre-cook the food. Hey, I got an accent on my finger because it's pre-cooking stuff. Making sure you have note-taking implements. You have a pen handy, another pen handy in case one runs out. You can, around September, still got some back-to-school sales, get some notebook, or you can use your phone to take notes. Just got to have some means of taking notes and recording, not so much the words, because we'll get those words out in a few days, but the inspiration and promptings you're getting. Also recommend looking up the Cornell note-taking system. It's from Cornell University, and it's a handy way of taking notes and to get the notes down, but also the sum up things and to make sure it reinforces what you're learning. Spiritual prep, prayer, fasting, sacrifice eating unhealthy sweet rolls because you're more concerned about getting the spirit than socializing. So the problem is people think church, they talk about they go to church because they want community. What they really want is socializing. So from community to socializing, but instead of socializing, it really means chatting with people, doing a munch and mingle. That's not church. So prayer, fasting, you can review past talks this week, review your patriarchal blessing, which is personalized revelation. And another way to do that is talk with, not talk at your spouse. Don't issue orders, and talk with your family members about what they're expecting. So that's my recommendations for conference prep. And that's news with the eyes of faith.